The clock on the wall struck 9 in the evening. I sat in my small tea studio, separated from my pottery workshop by a gravel courtyard. The scent of aged pu'er tea hung in the air, thick and serene, like the layer of time dust on old Xisha teapots. On my phone screen, the live stream of my wife, Mei Li, had been running for 15 minutes. She had told me she was in Shanghai for a brand event. I had replied, "Travel safely," while my hands were still polishing a Celadon teacup. Mei Li thought I was in Jingdezhen, Jiangxi, sourcing a special type of clay. That was the story I had fabricated 3 days ago. The truth was, I had never left this small alley in Beijing. I had simply moved into the tea studio, quietly observing my own home and workshop. On the screen, Mei Li looked stunning. A red silk dress clung to her body, a stark contrast to the rustic, dusty backdrop of the pottery workshop. She was smiling, that radiant smile beloved by her tens of thousands of followers. Beside her was Wang Kai, a self-proclaimed art appraiser whom she had introduced to me as a business partner. He wore an expensive suit, his hair slicked back, and was holding a bottle of red wine. "My dearest sisters," Mei Li cooed into the phone, her voice as sweet as honey. "Welcome to tonight's private live stream. Only those in Lily's VIP group can see this." So she thought. I took a sip of tea. A bitter taste spread, then softened into a deep sweetness at the back of my throat. My hacker friend, Chiang, had ensured that this private session would have a much larger audience than she could ever imagine. "This place is such a mess," Mei Li pouted, panning the camera around the workshop. "This is my husband's place, a potter. It sounds elegant, but really, he just messes with clay all day. Utterly boring." Wang Kai scoffed. "You're right, Lily. A woman like you deserves better things, not some craftsman covered in mud all the time." He raised his wine glass, lightly clinking it against hers. The comment section began to fill with heart emojis and praises. "Lily is so beautiful. Who's that guy?" Mei Li giggled, leaning against Wang Kai. "Oh, come on, Brother Kai. Let's not talk about him." She lowered her voice, whispering dramatically. "He's in Jiangxi anyway. Won't be back anytime soon. We have all night." I set my teacup down. My breathing remained steady. I had watched the recordings from the micro camera I had hidden in the workshop over and over. I knew everything. But watching them perform this charade live was an entirely different experience. Wang Kai put down his glass and walked to a corner of the workshop, where I kept the old wooden cabinet my master had left me. "Where's that box?" "Here," Mei Li pointed to a sandalwood box on a shelf. I had to lie and say I wanted to use it for a photo shoot. He bought it immediately. Such a fool. Wang Kai lifted the box down and opened it. Inside were broken pieces of ceramic, carefully wrapped in yellow silk. He picked up a shard, squinting at it. I've looked closely. Just some worthless broken porcelain from the Song dynasty. No value at all. Like master, like apprentice, hoarding junk his whole life. "Then why do we have to take it?" Mei Li asked, a hint of doubt in her voice. "Precaution," Wang Kai replied, his voice smug. "Linan always treats this box like a treasure. Maybe it has some sentimental value. If we take it, he'll be demoralized. It will be much easier for you to demand a divorce and divide the assets. He won't have the mind to argue." "Brother Kai, you're the smartest," Mei Li chirped, throwing her arms around him. And then, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. Chiang had activated the script. The comment section suddenly exploded. No more hearts or compliments. "What is this? This is a public live stream? Oh my God, is Mei Li cheating in her husband's workshop? Did she just call her husband a fool while stealing his things? Wang Kai, isn't that the fraud appraiser who scams people? Someone call the police." "Screen record this, everyone." The color drained from Mei Li's face. She stared at the screen, her eyes wide with horror. How? How is this possible? I set it to private. Wang Kai snatched the phone. The smug look on his face vanished, replaced by sheer panic. He fumbled to end the live stream, his hands shaking so much he missed the button several times. Finally, the screen went dark. But it was too late. The 17-minute video had already been recorded and was spreading like wildfire across every social media platform. In my tea studio, I calmly poured myself a new round of tea. My phone began to vibrate. It was Mei Li. I didn't answer. Another call. Then a text message. "Linan, where are you? Something happened. You have to believe me." I silenced my phone and placed it face down on the table. I looked across the courtyard at my workshop. The lights inside had just been extinguished. They had fled. The betrayal didn't hurt me. The pain had come months ago, when I first noticed the change in her. Now, there was only the cold stillness of a plan unfolding perfectly. They thought they had stolen a box of worthless junk. They had no idea they had just lit a fuse to a fire that would incinerate everything they had. And I, the boring potter, would be the one to control the flames. 6 months ago, my master passed away. He went peacefully in his sleep, leaving me his entire pottery workshop and a single wish: take care of the artifacts of our craft. Among those artifacts, the most important was the sandalwood box. My master had repeatedly warned me, do not let it fall into the hands of the profane. Only when your patience and skill are sufficient should you open it. Mei Li had appeared devastated at the funeral. She wept inconsolably, leaning on my shoulder, talking about how good my master had been to her. But I, who had lived with him for 15 years, knew he had never truly trusted her. That girl's eyes are too sharp, he once said. She doesn't see the essence of things, only the price at which they can be sold. After the funeral, life seemed to return to normal. I spent more time in the workshop, trying to soothe my grief with work. Mei Li, on the other hand, started going out more. Brand events, partner meetings, market research trips became increasingly frequent. At first, I didn't think much of it. That was the life of a KOL. But then, small signs began to appear. She started asking strange questions about my finances. Previously, Mei Li had never cared how many pieces I sold or what the workshop's income was. She had always dismissed it as a negligible craftsman's living. But now, she would ask things like, "Are you planning to sell those antique vases Master left you?" Or, "How much is this workshop worth if we sold the land?" And then, Wang Kai appeared. Mei Li introduced him as a famous art appraiser who could help elevate my work. The first time I met him, I felt an immediate discomfort. He looked at my pieces not with the eye of an art lover, but with the eye of a merchant. He breezed past the celadon vases that had taken me months to perfect, but lingered for a long time in front of the antiques left by my master, his hands caressing them, his eyes gleaming strangely. "Brother Lin An certainly has talent," he said, but his tone was condescending. "But in this era, talent isn't enough. You need to know how to market, how to create a story." Mei Li nodded vigorously. "Exactly, Brother Kai is right. Anne, you should listen to him." The seeds of doubt began to sprout then. I started paying closer attention. I noticed Mei Li would often be texting, then quickly delete the messages when I approached. She changed the passwords on her phone and computer. One evening, I overheard her conversation on the balcony. Her voice was low, but I caught words like, "The box. Are you sure? Wait for the right time." The tipping point came a month ago. I came home earlier than expected and found Wang Kai in my workshop, alone. He was trying to pry open the sandalwood box. Hearing me, he startled, hastily pretending to admire the pieces on the shelf. "Mr. Wang," I said, my voice calm. "Are you looking for something?" "Ah, hello, Brother Lin An," he stammered. I was just looking at the pieces. Mei Li asked me to come over and see if there was anything suitable for an upcoming exhibition." It was a clumsy lie. Mei Li had never discussed any exhibition with me. That night, I said nothing to her. A direct confrontation would solve nothing. It would only make them more cautious. I needed to know what they wanted and what their plan was. I contacted Chang, an old university friend who was now a cybersecurity expert. "Chang, I need your help," I said over the phone. "I need to know everything that's happening in my house and workshop when I'm not there." Qiang didn't ask many questions. He knew my character. 2 days later, he came and installed a system of microcameras and microphones, perfectly camouflaged. He also installed tracking software on Mei Li's phone and computer. "Everything will be sent directly to your private server," Chang said. "Here's the password. Be careful, Lin An." From that day on, I lived in 2 worlds. By day, I was the gentle, slightly naive potter husband. By night, I sat in my tea studio, reviewing recordings, reading deleted messages, and piecing together the full picture of their betrayal. I learned that Wang Kai had convinced Mei Li that I was hiding some kind of treasure left by my master. He had fabricated a story about my master discovering a lost batch of imperial porcelain. And that sandalwood box was the key. Their plan was simple. While I was away, they would take the box, find a way to sell the treasure inside, after which Mei Li would file for divorce and take half of my assets. When I overheard their plan to act on the night of Mei Li's livestream, I knew the time had come. I told her I had to go to Jingdezhen. I looked into her eyes and saw a flicker of joy, poorly concealed. "You should go then," she said. standing on her toes to give me a light kiss on the cheek. "I'll miss you so much while I'm at home." I nodded, saying nothing. When I drove out of the alley, I didn't head towards Jiangxi. I just drove around the city for a few hours, then parked my car in a public garage a few blocks away and walked back to my tea studio. Everything was set, the stage was ready, the actors were in place, and I, the silent director, just needed to sit behind the curtain and wait for their play to self-destruct. Patience, that was the first lesson my master taught me. And tonight, it had worked perfectly. That sandalwood box did not contain treasure of gold or jewels. To people like Wang Kai, it was indeed just a pile of worthless shards. But to me, and to my master, it held a legacy, a legend. My master, Teacher Cheng, was the last descendant of a family of potters that dated back to the Ming dynasty. His family had passed down not only pottery techniques but also records and secrets of the craft. One of the greatest secrets concerned the Jianyao Tenmoku bowl, a legendary type of teaware from the Song dynasty. Tenmoku bowls were famous for their lustrous black glaze, which featured patterns like silvery hairs, fur streaks, or iridescent oil spots resembling a galaxy. The technique for creating this glaze had long been lost. The few intact Tenmoku bowls that exist today are national treasures, mostly housed in museums in Japan and Taiwan. In mainland China, they had all but vanished. According to the records of the Chung family ancestors, at the end of the Song dynasty, as the Mongol armies invaded, a master potter tried to flee south with a batch of 12 of the most perfect Tenmoku bowls. But he was ambushed along the way. The entire batch of bowls was shattered. The potter miraculously survived, and he spent the rest of his life gathering every last shard, hoping one day to restore them. He failed, but he meticulously documented the shape, size, and glaze characteristics of each shard, along with the restoration methods he had researched. Those records and the shards were passed down through generations. When my master entrusted the box to me, he said, "This is not pottery, this is the soul of our craft." Our ancestor believed that if these pieces could be reassembled, we would not only restore an object but also rediscover the lost technique. But it requires a patience and a heart untainted by worldly dust. You are not ready yet. I didn't fully understand his meaning at the time. After he passed, I spent many nights studying the old notebooks he left behind. I compared the drawings, the notes on the chemical composition of the glaze, the firing temperatures. Gradually, a grand picture emerged. My master had not just left me broken pieces, he had left me a lifetime of research. He had deciphered nearly all the secrets of the Tenmoku glaze. The final, most difficult part, the technique to seamlessly bond the shards and revive the glaze's iridescence, he had left for me to complete. Wang Kai, with his shallow broker's knowledge, saw only broken pottery. He couldn't see the layered glaze, the subtle hare's fur patterns that shimmered under the light. He couldn't comprehend the priceless historical and artistic value contained in that pile of junk. If successfully restored, this would not just be a bowl, but the only Jianyao Tenmoku bowl in existence in mainland China, a true national treasure. Its value was immeasurable in monetary terms. His ignorance was his greatest weakness. He and Mei Li had stolen something they couldn't sell, couldn't show off, and couldn't even understand. They were holding a ticking time bomb. The next morning, I woke up early. The air was fresh and still. I brewed a new pot of tea and opened my laptop. As I had expected, the names Mei Li and Wang Kai were at the top of every search engine ranking. The livestream video had millions of views, hundreds of thousands of comments and shares. The tabloids ran the most vicious headlines. Livestream goddess reveals true colors. Cheating, insulting husband, and stealing on air. The mask comes off art expert Wang Kai. The career Mei Li had spent years building with fabricated images collapsed overnight. The brands she represented issued statements one after another, terminating their contracts. The fans who once adored her now cursed her without mercy. I scrolled through the comments. "I feel so sorry for the husband," one person wrote. "He must be heartbroken. I hope the husband stays strong and sues these two scumbags." They didn't know that the husband was perfectly calm. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt a cold emptiness. I wasn't happy about her downfall. I was simply doing what needed to be done, like trimming excess clay from a spinning wheel to shape a piece. My phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. I answered. "Is this Lin Ann?" a hoarse male voice asked. "I am the lawyer representing Miss Mei Li. We need to meet with you to discuss the divorce and resolve these recent misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" I repeated, my voice devoid of expression. Yes, Miss Mei Li was set up. That live stream video was doctored, the lawyer said brazenly. My client is suffering from severe emotional and reputational damage. We hope to resolve this amicably. I have nothing to say to you, I replied. From now on, please direct all communication to my lawyer, Teacher Zhang. I hung up before he could say another word. Then I called Lawyer Zhang, an old friend of my master, a man known for his integrity and sharp mind. Uncle Zhang, I said, it has begun. I saw the news. His voice was deep and reassuring. I'm ready. Just do as we discussed. Stay calm and do not engage with them directly. I hung up, looking towards my workshop. The sandalwood box was gone. But I wasn't worried. They would have to bring it back soon, because they had taken something they couldn't control, and now that very thing would control their fate. The media storm showed no signs of abating. On the contrary, it grew larger. Net detectives had dug up every corner of Mei Li and Wang Kai's past. They found photos of them traveling together months ago, ambiguous, flirty comments on alternate accounts. They even discovered that Wang Kai had previously been accused of selling fake antiques, but the case had been mysteriously suppressed. Mei Li's career was dead. She locked all her social media accounts, but it was too late. Her image, with her fake smile and her insults towards me, had become a widely ridiculed meme. For the next 2 days, I did nothing. I spent the time cleaning the tea studio, organizing my master's old books, and meditating. I needed a clear head. I knew they were panicking, and panicked people make mistakes. They did not disappoint me. Mei Li launched a pathetic whitewashing campaign. Her lawyer sent out a press release, claiming she was the victim of a targeted cyber attack, that the video was edited and taken out of context. They shamelessly claimed her relationship with Wang Kai was purely platonic, and their presence in the workshop was to prepare a surprise gift for me. The explanation was so ludicrous it only fueled public outrage. The second wave of criticism was even fiercer than the first. Then, she started calling me. Dozens of calls a day. I didn't answer. She switched to texting. The first messages were filled with anger and blame. Lin An, you coward. You set me up, didn't you? You ruined me. What do you get out of this? I won't let you get away with it. I read them, then deleted them. I didn't reply. After a day of no response, her tone changed. The anger was replaced by pleading. Anne, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please pick up the phone. Can we please talk? I was deceived by Wang Kai. He took advantage of me. It's all his fault. I only love you. Please, just come out and say a word for me. If you just say it was a misunderstanding, everyone will believe it. I'll do anything you want. I remained silent. Love? She didn't know the meaning of the word. To her, love was a tool, a commodity to be traded. Finally, on the third day, a luxury car screeched to a halt in front of my workshop. Wang Kai got out, his face gaunt, his expensive suit wrinkled. His usual smugness was gone. He walked straight to the tea studio door and started banging on it. Lin An, come out. I know you're in there. We need to talk. I sat still, holding one of my master's notebooks. I could see him on the security camera feed. He looked pathetic. He yelled for a while longer, then seemed to run out of steam. He slumped onto the steps, pulled out a cigarette, his hands trembling as he lit it. After finishing the cigarette, he stood up, straightened his clothes, trying to regain a shred of his composure. He pressed his face against the glass door, trying to peer inside. Lin An, he said, his voice lowered, we underestimated you. Fine. You win this round. But do you think you can destroy us this easily? That box, we have it. You wouldn't want anything to happen to it, would you? That was the threat I had been waiting for. He waited a few more minutes, and getting no reaction, left in a huff. As soon as he was gone, I called Lawyer Zhang. Uncle Zhang, they've started using the box to threaten me. Good, he replied. That's evidence of extortion. The camera recorded everything, right? Crystal clear. All right, Lin An, it's time for our next move. I'll send them the divorce papers and a restraining order tomorrow morning. The divorce will be filed on grounds of infidelity and emotional abuse. The restraining order will prevent them from coming within 200 meters of you and the workshop. At the same time, I will send a formal letter demanding the return of your personal property, that wooden box, within 48 hours. If they fail to comply, we will report it to the police as theft. They won't return it, I said. It's the only card they have left. I know, Lawyer Zhang said, a slight smile in his voice. But we must follow the procedure. Let them hold on to it a little longer. The longer they keep it, the more serious their crime becomes. You just continue to stay calm. The fire is burning at its hottest. let it consume them. I hung up, feeling a strange sense of peace. Everything was proceeding exactly as I had anticipated. They were flailing in a raging storm of their own making, while I stood on a solid shore built of truth and law. The storm would pass. And when it did, the sea would be calm again, leaving only the wreckage of a sunken ship. While Lawyer Zhang prepared the legal documents, I began my own work, gathering the shards of our marriage. Not the ceramic ones, but the evidence of Mei Li's deceit and greed. The livestream video was just the tip of the iceberg. I needed more to ensure that when she fell, she would never be able to get back up. My first stop was the bank. I requested detailed statements for all our joint accounts and credit cards for the past 2 years. The bank manager, a middle-aged man who had known me for years, looked at me with sympathy. He must have seen the news. "Mr. Lin, I'm very sorry for what happened," he said quietly. "Thank you," I replied. "I just need the documents." As I sat in the waiting room reviewing the statements, a dark financial picture began to emerge. Mei Li had started withdrawing money from our joint account over a year ago. At first, they were small amounts, a few thousand yuan at a time, labeled as shopping, spa, work expenses. I had never noticed, because I trusted her completely. But about 6 months ago, right after my master's death, the withdrawals became larger and more frequent, 10,000, 20,000, once even 50,000 yuan. All of it was transferred to a personal account I had never heard of. In total, she had secretly siphoned off nearly 300,000 yuan. It wasn't just money, it was a systematically planned betrayal. She had been preparing for her new life with the very money I earned from the work she had always disdained. I asked the bank to print out all these transactions, with official stamps. This would be irrefutable proof of her financial misconduct. Next, I returned to the tea studio and began to go through the data Chang had collected. Hundreds of hours of audio recordings, thousands of messages and emails. I patiently sat, listened, read, and organized everything chronologically. I heard Mei Li and Wang Kai's conversations in the workshop, in our home, even in her car. They discussed how to get more money from me, how to appraise the value of my master's antiques, how to fabricate stories to deceive me. Mei Li's voice, when speaking to Wang Kai, lacked the sweet, artificial tone she used on her live streams. It was sharp, calculating, and full of contempt. "It's a good thing that old man died," I heard her say in one recording. "He left Lin An a fortune. He's so stupid he doesn't know how to use it. I'll help him." "Take it slow," Wang Kai replied. "Don't let him get suspicious. Just make him believe you're madly in love with him. Men become idiots when they're in love." Every word was like a needle pricking my ears. But there was no pain, only a cold confirmation. I was right not to believe her tears, not to believe her pleas. I found email exchanges between Wang Kai and his clients. He had sold them appraised antiques at exorbitant prices, complete with fake certificates of authenticity. In one email, he bragged to a friend about how he had fooled another stupid new money tycoon. I carefully backed up all this evidence onto multiple hard drives. I created a complete file, a detailed indictment of their crimes. It included video, audio, bank documents, emails, and text messages. When Lawyer Zhang called me in the afternoon, I had everything ready. "Lin An, I've sent the divorce papers and restraining order," he said. "Their lawyer just called me." His tone was very aggressive. "He said they're going to countersue you for slander and invasion of privacy." "That's fine," I replied. "I have everything we need." "Excellent. Now, send me everything you have. But keep one part back, the most important part. We won't play all our cards at once. We'll let them think they can win. Then, at the very last moment, we'll show them just how wrong they are." I understood his meaning. This was a game of chess. And in chess, the winner is not the one who makes the most brilliant moves, but the one who is most patient, the one who sees the entire board. That evening I didn't work. I took a walk to the lake near my home. The night air was cool. The lake's surface was as smooth as a mirror, reflecting the city lights. I thought about my master. He taught me how to fire pottery. He said that to create a perfect piece, the fire in the kiln must be controlled precisely. Too little fire, the glaze won't mature. Too much fire, the pottery will crack. This confrontation was like firing a kiln. I had started the fire. Now, I had to patiently control the temperature, waiting for the right moment to open the door and retrieve the final piece. A piece of justice. As Lawyer Zhang predicted, the divorce papers and restraining order enraged Mei Li and Wang Kai. Instead of being afraid, they became more aggressive. They took it as a declaration of war. Their lawyer, a man notorious for his dirty tactics, held a press conference. In front of dozens of cameras, Mei Li wept hysterically. She told a completely fabricated story, that I was an abusive, controlling husband who had dominated her for years, that I was jealous of her success and had deliberately set a trap to ruin her career. Wang Kai, standing beside her, played the role of a good friend, a white knight trying to protect her from her evil husband. They also announced they would be suing me for defamation, demanding a huge sum for emotional distress and reputational damage. Their performance was quite convincing. A portion of the public, those who always love a good plot twist, began to have doubts. Maybe she was really framed? She looked so heartbroken. I watched the press conference in my tea studio, feeling nothing. They were acting. But the more complex the play, the more lines they had, the easier it was to find a flaw. A few days later, I received a call from an unknown number. This time, I decided to answer. "Brother Lin An," Wang Kai's voice came through, a hint of confidence returning. "I'm sure you've seen the press conference. Public opinion is starting to shift to our side." "Is that so?" I asked, my voice flat. "Stop pretending," he growled. "What do you want? Money? Or do you just want to see us ruined? You should know, if we go down, we're taking you with us. Do you think installing cameras to spy on your wife is legal? You could go to jail for that." "I didn't install cameras to spy on my wife," I replied calmly. "I installed cameras to protect the property in my workshop. The fact that my wife and her lover came in to steal and commit adultery was just a coincidence." There was silence on the other end for a moment. It seemed he hadn't expected that answer. "All right," he continued, his voice turning cold. "Let's cut to the chase. The box. We know it's very important to you. Your master left it to you, right? Would you like to see it smashed to pieces?" "Is that a threat, Mr. Wang?" "Let's just say it is," he sneered. "Withdraw the divorce petition, publicly apologize to Mei Li and say it was all a misunderstanding. Then we'll talk about dividing the assets. Otherwise, I'll livestream myself smashing that box with a hammer. Let's see what's left of your master's precious relic then." He thought he had found my weakness. He believed that I, a sentimental craftsman, would surrender for the sake of a sentimental object. He was gravely mistaken. "Go ahead," I said, my voice as cold as ice. Silence again. This time, it was longer. I could hear his heavy breathing over the phone. What did you say?" he stammered. I said, "Go ahead and smash it," I repeated, enunciating each word clearly. "You can live stream it. I'll even share the link for you. But remember this, Wang Kai. The moment your hammer touches those ceramic shards, it will no longer be simple destruction of property. The National Institute of Cultural Heritage has already received my report about a missing artifact that is potentially a national treasure. Your actions will be considered the destruction of national cultural heritage. You can look up the penalty for that crime yourself." I hadn't actually filed a report. It was a bluff. But based on his shallow knowledge and his current panic, I believed it would work. You're lying," he shouted. "It's just a pile of junk." "Then why are you holding on to it?" I countered. "If it's junk, why not return it to me? Why use it to threaten me? Mr. Wang, your greed has blinded you. You are holding something you don't understand, and that lack of understanding will be your ruin." I didn't wait for his reply. I hung up. In the tea studio, I stood up and walked to my desk. I took out a stack of Schwan paper, ground some ink, and began to practice calligraphy. It was how my master had taught me to quiet my mind. Stroke by stroke, the characters appeared. Sinzing Rushrei. The heart as still as water. Wang Kai's threat wasn't entirely empty. He might actually smash the shards in a fit of rage. It was a risk, but it was a risk I had to take. Because I knew if I took one step back, they would advance 10. The only way to deal with bullies is to show them you are not afraid. And I truly wasn't afraid. Because the value of the Tenmoku Bowl wasn't just in the physical shards. It was in the legacy, the technique, the records my master had left behind. Even if the shards were destroyed, that legacy would remain, in my mind and in my hands. Wang Kai had tried to light a fire to scare me. He didn't know that I was used to living in the 1,000-degree fire of the kiln. His little flame, to me, was just a match in the wind. My bluff worked. Wang Kai did not livestream himself smashing the box. He and Mei Li went unusually quiet for a few days. They were probably trying to verify whether my claim about the national treasure was true. That silence gave me more time to shift from defense to offense. My next target was not Mei Li. She was just a puppet, a vain woman driven by greed. The real puppeteer, the more dangerous one, was Wang Kai. To kill a snake, you must strike its head. I called Chiang again. Chiang, I need you to dig deeper into Wang Kai. Not just his art dealings. I want everything. Bank accounts, relationships, enemies. Anything we can use. This might cross some legal boundaries, Linan, Chiang said, a little hesitant. I know, I replied. But he threatened to destroy my master's relic. This is no longer personal. He is a cancer in the art world. It's time to cut it out. Chiang was silent for a moment, then sighed. All right. For you and for teacher Cheng. But after this, you owe me your most expensive tea. While waiting for information from Chiang, I conducted my own investigation. I recalled the times Wang Kai had visited the workshop, how he would brag about his big clients. He had mentioned the names of a few newly rich collectors, people with more money than knowledge of art. I started looking for information on these people. I posed as a potential buyer, contacting art galleries, auction houses, and other brokers. I pretended to inquire about pieces that Wang Kai had sold, saying I was looking for something similar. Gradually, a web of deceit emerged. Wang Kai operated with a clear pattern. He would find genuine, but average quality, antiques. Then, he would hire lesser-known craftsmen to refurbish or repair them, making them look more perfect. Next, he would write his own fake appraisal certificates, inventing a compelling story about the item's provenance, such as discovered in an ancient tomb or once owned by a high-ranking official of the Qing dynasty. Finally, he would sell these pieces to inexperienced collectors at 5 or even 10 times their actual value. It was a sophisticated scam. He wasn't selling outright fakes, which made it hard to sue him. He was simply inflating value and fabricating stories. After 3 days, Chang called me back. I've got what you need, Linan. This guy is dirtier than we thought. Chang had managed to hack into Wang Kai's computer and phone systems. He had found everything. Audio files of conversations Wang Kai secretly recorded to blackmail clients. Email exchanges with workshops that made replicas. Financial statements showing he had evaded a massive amount of taxes. But the most valuable thing Chiang found was a series of wire transfers to an offshore account. It turned out Wang Kai wasn't just scamming collectors. He was also a money launderer. He used the art transactions with their inflated values to legitimize dirty money for some corrupt officials. This is no longer a civil fraud case, Chiang said, his voice serious. This is organized crime. Linan, you're dealing with very dangerous people. I know, I replied. But now, I have the weapon to fight them. I spent the entire night organizing the evidence Chiang sent me. I created a separate file on Wang Kai, even thicker than the one on Mei Li. It contained not only proof of his art scams, but also evidence of tax evasion and money laundering. This was the finishing blow. Mei Li's affair was a moral stain. Wang Kai's art scams could land him in prison for a few years. But money laundering and colluding with corrupt officials that would bury him forever. The next morning, I sent a small portion of this file, the part related to the art scams, but without the money laundering evidence, to lawyer Zhang. Uncle Zhang, this is what I found on Wang Kai, I said over the phone. There was a long silence after he reviewed the files. My God, Linan, he finally spoke, his voice filled with astonishment. How did you do this? I was just patient in my search, I replied. This is more than a search, he said. This is a fatal blow. This kid is finished. All right, I know what to do next. I'll arrange a meeting with their lawyer. It's time to bring the curtain down on this play. I hung up, looking out the window. The Beijing sky was unusually clear today. A gentle breeze blew, rustling the wind chimes hanging on the tea studio's porch, creating a clear, peaceful sound. Wang Kai's web of deceit, no matter how sophisticated, was ultimately built on the fragile threads of greed. And now, I would use the truth, as sharp as a blade, to cut every single thread. The meeting was arranged at lawyer Zhang's office, a solemn space with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, filled with the faint scent of old paper and wisdom. I arrived early, sitting with lawyer Zhang in the conference room, sipping the tea he had just brewed. Are you ready, Linan? He asked, looking at me over his reading glasses. I've been ready for 6 months, I replied. At exactly 10 o'clock, Mei Li, Wang Kai, and their lawyer walked in. Mei Li wore heavy makeup, trying to conceal her fatigue and haggardness, but the dark circles under her eyes were unmistakable. She wore a black business suit, attempting to project an air of seriousness. Wang Kai, in contrast, tried to appear arrogant, crossing his arms, looking at me with a defiant glare. Their lawyer, a bald, pot-bellied man, placed his leather briefcase on the table with a dramatic thud. Lawyer Zhang, he said condescendingly. "We are here today to make a final offer. My client, Miss Mei Li, is willing to overlook the damages caused by Mr. Trades Lin An on the condition that he withdraws the divorce petition, issues a public apology, and transfers 50% of his assets, including this pottery workshop, to her as compensation." Lawyer Zhang said nothing. He just smiled, a gentle smile that held a sharp chill. He pushed a thick file across the table toward the lawyer. "Before we discuss your offer, please take a look at this," Lawyer Zhang said. The lawyer frowned and opened the file. For the first few seconds, his expression remained confident. But as he read on, his brow furrowed deeper. The smile on his lips vanished. He started flipping the pages faster, beads of sweat forming on his bald forehead. That was the first file. Evidence of Mei Li's infidelity and her siphoning of the joint account. It included bank statements, audio recordings of her conversations with Wang Kai, and even photos of them on vacation together that I had Chang recover from her phone. This is an invasion of privacy," the lawyer stammered, his voice losing its bluster. "This evidence is inadmissible." "Some of it might be debatable in court," Lawyer Zhang admitted nonchalantly. "But do you really want to present these things to the public? Imagine what the press will write when they see these bank statements, hear these recordings." Mei Li, seeing her lawyer's expression, grew anxious. "What is it?" she asked. The lawyer didn't answer, just motioned for her to be quiet. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. "All right, we'll agree to the divorce. But there will be no compensation. The assets will be divided equally according to the law." Lawyer Zhang smiled again. "I'm afraid that's not possible." He pushed a second file, even thicker than the first, across the table. "Please, continue reading." This time, Wang Kai paid attention. He leaned forward, looking at the file. This was the file on his art fraud. Inside were the testimonies of 3 collectors he had scammed, whom Lawyer Zhang had secretly contacted. Accompanying them were analyses from independent appraisal experts showing the discrepancy between the real value and the price Wang Kai had sold them for. And finally, his email exchanges with replica workshops and clients. When Wang Kai saw those emails, his face turned deathly pale. His arrogant demeanor completely vanished. He turned to look at me, his eyes no longer defiant, but filled with horror and disbelief. Where did you get these?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I just took a sip of tea. Their lawyer had now completely collapsed. He slumped back in his chair, holding his head in his hands. He knew the game was over. His clients were facing not just an unfavorable divorce, but the risk of prison time. What do you want?" the lawyer asked, his voice weak. "My client, Mr. Lin An, wants the following," Lawyer Zhang said, his voice clear and firm. "First, an immediate divorce. Miss Mei Li will receive nothing, and must return the full 298,000 yuan she stole from the joint account, plus interest. Second, the sandalwood box containing the relic of Teacher Cheng must be returned, intact, within 24 hours. Third, both Miss Mei Li and Mr. Wang Kai must sign a non-disclosure agreement, pledging never to mention Mr. Lin An or anything related to this case in public. If they violate it, another file, a much more interesting one, will be sent directly to the police and the tax bureau." Lawyer Zhang paused, looking directly at Wang Kai. "I trust you understand which file I'm referring to, Mr. Wang." Wang Kai shuddered. He knew. He knew that I still held the biggest trump card, the evidence of money laundering. There was no more negotiation. It was an unconditional surrender. We agree," the lawyer said, as if all the air had been knocked out of him. Mei Li burst into tears, not the dramatic tears of her press conference, but the real tears of desperation and collapse. She looked at me, her eyes pleading, but I turned away, looking out the window. The chessboard had been flipped. The game was over. That evening, a taxi stopped in front of the workshop. Mei Li got out, alone. She had lost her usual glamorous look. A simple black dress, her hair tied back, her unadorned face revealing her exhaustion and pallor. In her hands, she clutched the sandalwood box. I was waiting for her in the pottery workshop. The warm yellow light illuminated rows of ceramics waiting to be fired. The familiar scent of damp clay and glaze filled the space. Mei Li hesitated before stepping in. This was the first time we had been face to face since everything had fallen apart. She avoided my gaze, placing the sandalwood box gently on my workbench. I've brought it back," she said, her voice hoarse. I said nothing. I opened the box, checking each silk-wrapped shard. They were all intact, not a single new scratch. I let out a quiet sigh of relief. After a long silence, Mei Li spoke. "Why, Linan?" "Why what?" I asked, my eyes still on the ceramic pieces. "Why did you do this? You knew everything all along, didn't you? Why didn't you say anything to me? Why didn't you give me a chance?" I finally looked up at her. I looked deep into the eyes that had once captivated me, eyes that now held only emptiness and confusion. "A chance?" I repeated, my voice terrifyingly calm. "I gave you countless chances. A chance to be honest when you started lying about your trips. A chance to stop when you started taking money from our joint account. A chance to turn back when you brought Wang Kai into this very home. You didn't take any of them." She stammered. "I was bewitched by him. I made a mistake." "Don't blame Wang Kai," I interrupted. "He is greedy, but so are you. You two were a match made in heaven. You treated our marriage, my feelings, my master's legacy as commodities to be traded. You never truly loved me. You only loved what you thought I could give you." She couldn't refute it, because it was the truth. "These shards," I continued, picking one up, the light catching the silvery streaks in the black glaze. "You and he saw them as junk, but do you know what they are? They are the last remaining pieces of a Jianyao Tenmoku bowl, a lost national treasure. Its value, your entire life's work and 10 of Wang Kai's lifetimes couldn't afford it." Mei Li's eyes widened in astonishment. The full extent of her own ignorance and greed was written on her face. She finally understood what she had lost. Not money, but a chance to be part of something great, something timeless. I didn't know," she whispered, her voice full of regret. "Exactly. You didn't know," I said. "And that is the difference between us. I spend my life seeking true value, while you only chase a good price." I placed the shard back in the box and closed the lid. "It's over, Mei Li. The divorce papers will be sent tomorrow. I expect you to sign them. After today, we owe each other nothing." I turned my back to her and walked towards the potter's wheel. It was a clear signal that the conversation was over. Mei Li stood there for a long time. I could feel her gaze on my back. Finally, I heard her footsteps, receding, then gone. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt a profound sadness. Sadness for a dead marriage, for a woman who had lost herself to vanity. I didn't sleep that night. I sat beside the sandalwood box, my hand gently stroking the grain of the wood. My master's relic had returned. The shards of the past had been gathered. Now, the hardest work was about to begin, piecing them together, not just the ceramic, but the fragments of my life. The fire in the kiln had gone out. Only ashes remained. But from those ashes, something new and more durable would be reborn. I had to believe that. 6 months passed. Autumn in Beijing brought a cool breeze and golden leaves that carpeted the small alley. My life had returned to its inherent tranquility. The divorce was quick and quiet. Mei Li signed all the documents without any resistance. She also transferred back the full amount of money. From what I heard, she sold all her designer bags and jewelry and moved to a small city in the south, starting a new life under a different name. She vanished from the world of social media as if she had never existed. Wang Kai was not so fortunate. Although I never released the file on his money laundering, the evidence of his art fraud somehow leaked to the public. A few influential collectors he had duped decided not to let the matter rest. They jointly filed a lawsuit. The police and tax authorities got involved. A large-scale investigation was launched. Wang Kai was arrested shortly after. His web of deceit had completely collapsed. I read the news about him in the paper, saw the photo of him in handcuffs, his face gaunt and defeated, and felt nothing. Justice had found its own way to him. For me, the past 6 months had been a journey of healing. I dedicated all my time and energy to restoring the Tenmoku bowl. It was a task that demanded absolute patience and concentration. I followed my master's notes. I studied each shard, categorizing them by shape, curvature, and glaze pattern. I spent weeks just trying to find the precise formula for a natural lacquer that could bond the pieces without leaving a trace. The process was like a form of meditation. As my hands worked, my mind became calm. I no longer thought about betrayal or pain. I thought only of the bowl, its history, the soul of the craftsman who created it nearly 1,000 years ago. And then, one late autumn afternoon, the moment came. Only one last piece remained. It was as small as a fingernail, but it was the most crucial piece, the one that would complete the bowl's form. I held my breath, my hands steady. I gently placed the final shard into position. It fit perfectly. I took a step back to admire my work. The Jianyao Tenmoku bowl was reborn. It wasn't perfect. If one looked closely, one could still see the faint, web-like lines of the joints, the scars of time. But it was these scars that gave it its beauty. It told a story of brokenness and mending, of being lost and found. Under the light of the workshop, the bowl's lustrous black glaze glowed with a mystical beauty. The silvery hair's fur streaks seemed to move, and the iridescent oil spots shimmered like a miniature galaxy held within the bowl. I knew my master would be proud. The next day, I contacted the National Museum. I told them I wished to donate an artifact. When the experts from the museum arrived, they couldn't believe their eyes. They examined it, verified it, and finally, they confirmed it. This was the legendary Jianyao Tenmoku bowl. The donation ceremony was held formally. I had requested to remain anonymous, with the donor credited only as the apprentice of Teacher Cheng. I didn't need fame or recognition. Fulfilling my master's wish and returning this treasure to the country was the greatest reward for me. That evening, after everything was done, I returned to my workshop. The place was quiet again. The sandalwood box was now empty, but I still placed it in a position of honor. I sat down at my potter's wheel and took a fresh lump of clay. It was cool and moist in my hands. I started the wheel, feeling its steady rhythm. Under my hands, the formless clay began to take shape. Life is like making pottery. Sometimes it breaks. Sometimes it's thrown into a raging fire. But it is through that breaking and that fire that it becomes stronger and more beautiful. I had lost a wife, but I had found myself again. I had faced betrayal, but I had learned to forgive not for them, but for the peace of my own soul. The wheel kept spinning. A new vase was slowly taking form. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that as long as I had clay, a wheel, and a fire in the kiln, I could always create something new. I could always be reborn. The donation of the Tenmoku bowl, though done quietly, created a much larger echo than I could have imagined. The National Museum held a grand press conference to announce the return of the national treasure. My name was not mentioned. The donor's identity was vaguely described as the descendant of a long line of artisans, who dedicated himself to restoring an ancestral relic. That story, along with the image of the bowl displayed reverently in a glass case, became a major cultural event. Experts, historians, and art lovers across the country were abuzz. They analyzed the restoration technique, praising the skill and virtue of the anonymous artisan. Someone even called it a miracle of modern ceramics. To me, these accolades were like the sound of rain outside the tea studio window. I heard them, but I didn't let them seep in. The peace after the storm was something I cherished more than any fame. I returned to my daily routine, kneading clay, throwing forms, mixing glazes. My hands found solace in the familiar movements. My mind found stillness in focusing on the work. However, I couldn't entirely escape the echo I had created. A week after the press conference, I received an email. The sender was Shen Zhuiying, the head of the Ceramic Research and Conservation Department at the National Museum. She was one of the few who knew my identity. Mr. Lin An, the email read, "On behalf of the National Museum, I would like to once again express our deepest gratitude for your dedication. The restoration technique you used on the Tenmoku bowl has opened a new path for our conservation work. We are in absolute awe and hope for an opportunity to learn from you." She went on to say that the museum had a research project on Lost Song Dynasty glaze firing techniques and wondered if I could spare some time to participate as a consultant. The offer made me hesitate. A part of me wanted to refuse. I was tired of the outside world, of complicated relationships. This workshop was my fortress, the place where I felt safe. But another part of me felt a pull. This was my master's legacy. He had spent his life researching, and his wish was that this knowledge not be lost. Sharing it with the museum, with people who truly valued it, was perhaps the best way to honor that wish. I thought about it for 2 days. I brewed the tea my master loved most, sat in the spot he used to sit, and asked myself what he would do. I believe he would have agreed. My master was generous with his knowledge, as long as it was given to the right people. I replied to Zhu Ying's email, agreeing to a meeting at my workshop. I didn't want to go to the museum, where there were too many people. I wanted the conversation to happen in my own space, where I was in control. A few days later, Shen Zhuiying arrived. She was different from what I had imagined. Not an old, stern researcher, but a young woman, perhaps around 30, with bright eyes and a warm smile. She wore a simple linen shirt and trousers, looking more like a schoolteacher than a museum expert. She didn't immediately jump to questions about techniques. Instead, She walked around the workshop, admiring each piece on the shelves with genuine appreciation. "These Celadon cups," she said, her voice full of admiration. "Their green is so deep and clear, like an autumn lake after the rain." She was the first person, besides my master, to comment on my work with such poetic language. Mei Li would have only asked, "How much can this sell for?" We sat down in the tea studio. I brewed tea, performing the ritual slowly, methodically. She sat opposite me, watching quietly, not rushing me. Her patience endeared her to me. "Mr. Lin," she began after we had finished the first round of tea, "I know you desire a quiet life, but what you did with the Tenmoku bowl was more than just restoring an object. You reconnected a broken thread of our heritage. We really need your help." She spoke about the difficulties they were facing in preserving ancient ceramics, about glazes that were fading over time, about cracks that were widening. Her voice was filled with passion and dedication to her work. I realized that the echo of my actions brought not just hollow fame, but also a responsibility to continue my master's work, a responsibility to protect the heritage of the past. Perhaps my rebirth was not just about mending my own life, but about using my skills to mend the broken pieces of history. "Please, call me Lin An," I said, "and tell me, how can I help?" Zhu Ying's smile was as radiant as the sun. For the first time in months, I felt a door, not closing but slowly creaking open. The collaboration between the museum and me began cautiously. Initially, I only communicated with Zhu Ying via email, sharing some notes on the chemical composition of Song Dynasty glazes that I had compiled from my master's notebooks. But her questions became increasingly deep and technical, forcing me to admit that indirect communication was not enough. A month later, she came to my workshop with a carefully sealed wooden box. This time, she wasn't alone. 2 security guards accompanied her. "Lin An, we have a difficult case," she said after the guards had taken their positions outside, "and the director gave special permission to bring it out of the museum for your consultation." Inside the box was a white glazed ceramic pillow from the Ding kilns, also from the Song Dynasty. It was shaped like a sleeping baby, an incredibly exquisite and lifelike piece. But one of the baby's cheeks had a large crack, and the characteristic ivory-white glaze of Dingware was stained with unsightly yellow patches. "We've tried various methods," Zhu Ying explained, her voice tinged with frustration. "But all modern cleaning agents risk damaging the original glaze. The crack is widening. We're afraid it might break in too one day." I put on gloves and carefully lifted the ceramic pillow. I examined it under natural light, using a magnifying glass to observe every minute detail. The stain was not from ordinary dirt. It seemed to have seeped deep into the glaze. "This is from humidity," I said after a long silence. "It was stored in an unsuitable environment for a long time. The minerals in the glaze have oxidized." "We thought so too. But how do we reverse that process?" I didn't answer immediately. I placed the ceramic pillow back in its box. "Leave it here for a few days. I need time to study it." Zhu Ying nodded in trust. "We're counting on you." After she left, I began my work. I didn't touch the ceramic pillow. Instead, I took out the experimental Dingware shards my master had collected. I started to recreate that signature ivory-white glaze. I experimented with different ratios of rice husk, ash, quartz, and kaolin clay. I fired them at different temperatures, in different atmospheres, oxidizing and reducing. This work required infinite precision and patience. Each firing took a full day, followed by another day for the kiln to cool. There were many failures. The glaze turned out too white, too opaque, or it cracked. During those days, Zhu Ying would occasionally stop by. She didn't ask about progress. She would just bring some good tea, or a book on ancient ceramics she thought I might like. We would sit in the tea studio talking about the history of the Ding kilns, about the lives of the anonymous artisans who created such magnificent works. Through these conversations, I learned more about her. She was born into a family of historians, and a love for antiques was in her blood. She spoke of her work with a pure passion, a dedication I hadn't seen in anyone since my master passed away. Her presence was not loud or demanding. It was gentle and peaceful, like the Celadon glaze I loved. After nearly 2 weeks of experiments, I finally found the solution. The problem wasn't cleaning, it was reviving. I had created a special liquid glaze with a composition almost identical to the original. When Zhu Ying next visited, I was ready. Under her watchful eye, I used a microfine brush to carefully apply the liquid glaze to the stained surface. Then, I didn't use a modern electric kiln. I used a small wood-fired kiln, the kind ancient potters would have used. Why the wood-fired kiln? Zhu Ying asked curiously. Because of the flame, I replied. The flame from the wood creates an imperfect reducing atmosphere, a controlled randomness. It is this imperfection that can revive the warm ivory white of the Ding glaze. An electric kiln is too perfect. It would create a dead white. We watched the kiln together through the night. The flickering flames illuminated our faces. We didn't talk much, just shared the silence and the hope. The next morning, when the kiln had cooled, I carefully opened the door. The ceramic pillow emerged. The yellow stains were completely gone, replaced by a uniform, warm, and vibrant ivory white. The large crack had also been treated with a special technique, making it almost invisible to the naked eye. Zhu Ying was speechless. She just stared at the piece, her eyes sparkling with an indescribable emotion. Lin An, she finally managed to say, "You didn't just fix it, you gave it its soul back." Looking at her sincere smile and shining eyes, I realized that in the process of restoring the ceramic pillow, I had also inadvertently applied a new glaze to my own life. A glaze that didn't hide the cracks of the past, but blended with them, creating a new, deeper, and more mature beauty. My reputation, though I tried to keep it quiet, spread within the world of ceramic art. Not in a loud journalistic way, but through word of mouth among professionals. People didn't know my name, but they knew that teacher Cheng's heir was living and working in this small alley. This brought an uninvited guest I hadn't anticipated. One morning, as I was opening the workshop, a young man of about 18 or 20 was already waiting. He was thin, tall, wore thick glasses, and was holding a cardboard box. He looked timid and anxious. "Excuse me," he mumbled. Is this teacher Cheng's pottery workshop?" "The master has passed away," I replied. "What business did you have with him?" I know," he said, bowing his head. "I heard. His apprentice took over the workshop." I want to become an apprentice." I frowned. It had been a long time since anyone had come to learn. The craft of handmade pottery was arduous, the income unstable. It no longer appealed to the youth. My master himself only ever had me as a student. "I'm not accepting apprentices," I said flatly, about to close the door. "Please, sir, just look at my work," he said hastily, opening the cardboard box. Inside was a Zisha teapot. I glanced at it. The form was still immature, the details unrefined, but I could see the effort and a glimmer of potential. The problem was, this was Zisha ware. My workshop specialized in glazed ceramics, not Zisha. "You've come to the wrong person," I said. "I don't make Zisha." "I know. I just wanted to show you that I'm serious," he said, his voice almost pleading. "I've admired teacher Cheng for a long time. I've read everything written about him. I want to learn traditional glazed pottery techniques. I'm not afraid of hard work." The fervor in his eyes reminded me of myself 20 years ago. I had also stood before this workshop door, with the same mix of eagerness and trepidation, asking my master to take me in. But I was not my master. I was an introvert, accustomed to silence and solitude. The responsibility of teaching someone, of passing on knowledge, was a heavy one I wasn't sure I could bear. "You should go home," I said, my voice a bit softer. "I really can't teach you." I closed the door, leaving him standing outside. I couldn't concentrate on my work for the rest of the day. The image of the young man kept replaying in my mind. My master's legacy, if I didn't pass it on, would it be lost with me? Restoring the Tenmoku bowl, or the Ding pillow, was about saving the past, but teaching a new generation was about cultivating the future. The next day he came again, standing in the same spot, with the same determined look. He said nothing, just bowed his head when I opened the door. And the day after that he was still there. On the fourth day, it started to rain. I opened the door to find him huddled under the eaves, soaked to the bone but unwilling to leave. I sighed. This persistence, it was exactly like my younger self. My master had tested me in the same way. "Come in," I said. His head snapped up, his eyes shining with joy and disbelief. He awkwardly stepped into the workshop, looking around at everything with awe and admiration. "What's your name?" I asked while handing him a dry towel. "My name is Xiao Li." "All right, Xiao Li," I said. "I haven't agreed to take you as my apprentice yet, but I'll give you a chance. Your first task is to clean this entire workshop. When I see it spotless, without a single speck of dust, we'll talk again." It was the exact same first test my master had given me. Xiao Li didn't complain. He immediately set to work. He worked diligently, carefully wiping down every shelf, sweeping every corner. In the afternoon, Zhu Ying dropped by. She was surprised to see Xiao Li. "Who's that?" she asked quietly. "A nuisance," I replied, but I felt a strange warmth in my chest. Zhu Ying smiled. "I think you'd make a good teacher." Watching Xiao Li hard at work, the back of his shirt soaked with sweat, I suddenly realized that this workshop had been too quiet for too long. The presence of another person, of new life, was perhaps not a bad thing. A legacy doesn't just lie in antiques or notebooks. A legacy is alive. It's passed from one generation to the next, through handprints on clay, through words of guidance, through persistence and passion. Perhaps it was time for me to leave my own handprint, not just on my pottery, but on a young soul. Xiao Li passed the first test with flying colors. He not only cleaned the workshop immaculately, but also organized the tools in a neat, logical manner. I didn't say it out loud, but in my heart, I had accepted him as my student. My life took on a new rhythm. In the mornings, I would teach Xiao Li the most basic techniques: how to wedge clay to remove air bubbles, how to center it on the wheel. He was bright and diligent, though sometimes clumsy. His presence made the workshop feel less solitary. My collaboration with Zhu Ying also grew closer. She became a regular visitor to the tea studio. We talked about more than just work. We talked about books, music, and travels. I discovered she had a deep understanding and a sensitive soul. Being with her, I felt comfortable and could be myself. However, the past sometimes returned like a ghost. One afternoon, while having tea with Zhu Ying, I was casually scrolling through my phone and came across a small news item. The headline read, "Art Fraud Case of Wang Kai-nier's Trial." The article included a photo of him, gaunt and haggard, being led from the courthouse. There was no trace of the dapper, smug broker he once was. The article also mentioned Mei Li as a key witness, stating she had cooperated fully with the investigation and was living a reclusive life elsewhere. Zhu Ying noticed my unusual silence. "What's wrong, Lin An?" I showed her my phone. She skimmed the article, then placed the phone on the table, looking at me with sympathetic eyes. "Are you still thinking about it?" she asked softly. "Not really," I said honestly. "I'm not angry anymore, nor do I feel hatred. It reminds me that sometimes the most dangerous cracks are the ones you can't see." I looked at the teacup in my hand. A piece of pottery, if it has a crack, no matter how small, will shatter when fired at high temperatures. Trust is the same. Once it's cracked, it's very difficult to mend. It was the first time I had spoken of my pain in front of her. I had always tried to maintain a distance, a calm facade. But for some reason, with Zhu Ying, I felt I could reveal my vulnerability. She didn't offer empty words of comfort. She just quietly refilled my teacup. "I understand," she finally said after a moment. "My family also had a crack like that." She told me a story about her father. He was also a respected historian, but he had been betrayed by his best friend and most trusted colleague. The man had stolen his life's research and published it under his own name. "My father was devastated for a long time," she said, her eyes looking into the distance. "He lost faith in everyone. But then my mother told him something I'll never forget. People are like ancient ceramics. It's the cracks, the marks of time that give them their value and their story. The important thing is not to try to erase the cracks, but to learn to live with them and remain strong." Her words touched something deep inside me. I had always tried to forget, to pretend that marriage had never existed, but perhaps that wasn't the right way. That betrayal, that pain, had also become a part of me. It had taught me valuable lessons, had forged in me a patience and a deeper insight into human nature. "Your father, how is he now?" I asked. "He got through it," Zhu Ying smiled. "He went back to his research, to writing books. The crack is still there, but it no longer hurts him. It became a part of him, a reminder of the fragility of trust and the strength of forgiveness." Our conversation that day changed something in me. The wall of ice I had built around my heart began to melt. I realized that Zhu Ying hadn't just come into my life as a colleague or a friend. She had come as a restorer, gently and patiently, helping me to see and appreciate the invisible cracks within myself. Time flowed on. My small pottery workshop was no longer a solitary sanctuary, but had become a space of creation, teaching, and genuine connection. Xiao Li progressed rapidly. Under my guidance, he mastered the basic techniques and began to develop his own style. He was more than a student. He was a companion. His youthful enthusiasm and curiosity reignited the passion for my craft within me, a flame I sometimes thought had died out after all the turmoil. My relationship with Zhu Ying also gradually moved to a new chapter. We didn't need a formal declaration. Our affection was built through countless afternoons sharing tea, through passionate discussions about art, through understanding glances and warm smiles. Love came to me a second time, not as a passionate storm, but as a gently flowing river, deep and enduring. The restoration project Zhu Ying had brought me was also nearing completion. It was a guan-ware vase with a crackle glaze, another masterpiece from the Song dynasty. Its crack was even more complex than the ding pillows. It took me nearly 3 months to research and find a method to mend it while preserving the natural beauty of the crackle pattern. On the day of the final firing, both Zhu Ying and Xiao Li stayed with me. "Master, will it succeed?" Xiao Li asked nervously as I carefully placed the vase in the kiln. "I don't know either," I smiled. "Pottery is like life. We can prepare everything to the best of our ability, but the final outcome always depends on the fire. Sometimes, we have to learn to trust the fire." We sat in the tea studio, waiting. This time, there was no tension or solitude, like when I had watched over the ding pillow alone. Instead, there was a warm feeling of companionship. We chatted, drank tea, and listened to the crackling of the wood in the kiln. The next morning, as the first rays of sun touched the courtyard, the kiln had cooled. I opened the door. The vase stood there, whole and magnificent. The crack was perfectly mended, blending into the network of natural crackle lines, as if it had always been part of the design. The sunlight streamed in, making the celadon glaze shine with a sublime ethereal beauty. It's unbelievable," Zhu Ying whispered, her eyes shining with joy. Xiao Li let out a cheer. "It's a success. Master, you're amazing." I looked at the vase, then at the two people beside me. One was the present and future of my love. The other was the future of the legacy I carried. I realized that the most beautiful piece I had created in the past year was not the restored Tenmoku bowl, nor this vase. The most beautiful piece was the new life I had fired from the shards of my past. That evening, we didn't rush to return the vase to the museum. I placed a branch of white plum blossoms, which Zhu Ying had brought, into it. We set it in the center of the tea studio and sat together, admiring it. "My master once said," I began, "that a true potter doesn't just create beautiful objects. He must create works that can withstand time, works that can bring peace to the souls of others." I poured tea into 3 small cups I had just made myself, one for me, one for Zhu Ying, and one for Xiao Li. "I think I finally understand what he meant," I said, handing them their cups. "Building something that lasts isn't about building a wall to protect yourself. It's about building a home where you can share peace with the ones you love." Zhu Ying looked at me, her eyes glistening. She said nothing, just gently placed her hand on mine. Xiao Li nodded, his face filled with thought and admiration. Outside, night fell, but inside the small tea studio, the warm yellow light glowed. The fire in the pottery kiln may have been extinguished, but another fire, the fire of love, of hope, and of rebirth, was burning brighter than ever in my heart. And this time, I knew for certain, it was a fire that would never go out.